There's a piece of music that you are dying to be able to play, but you can't find the sheet music to it anywhere. Or if you can find the sheet music to it, you have to pay, which you don't want to do because you would so much rather that money go towards supporting Rebecca Robney on Patreon. Link in description. So you want to be able to learn it by ear. Here are my top tips for being able to do that as someone who taught herself how to do it as an adult who does not have perfect pitch, who has never taken a music theory class in her life. So let's jump into it. I'm going to organize this into two parts. Things to do before you start actively trying to learn a piece by ear, and some tips to incorporate while you are actively learning that piece. So before you learn it, my number one tip is to listen, and listen a lot. Really use your ear. Listen to a lot of different types of music, listen to a lot of different types of instruments, because think about it. If you are trying to be able to learn music by ear, what you're doing is you're trying to develop and strengthen your ear. So if that was any other part of your body, say you were really trying to strengthen your biceps so that they could be totally ripped and jacked just like mine, what would you do? You would be doing a lot of exercises that incorporate that muscle. So with ear training, it's the exact same way. Be doing things that exercise your ear. So when you're listening to a piece of music, think about it. Really actively listen, and that will make such a big difference. So when you're listening, think about what you're hearing. Think about the patterns. Am I hearing something that is repeating across the song or the piece of music? Or focus on two notes, focus on one interval. Is the second note higher or lower than the first note? Or do you think that those notes are really far apart? There's a big distance between them, or do you think that they're closer to each other? Just be thinking about these things and actively listening to them. You don't have to know the answers to any of these things, but if you are looking for these patterns and you are actively thinking about them, then your brain is going to start to recognize them, and your brain's going to recognize it across different pieces of music, and you're going to pick up on similar patterns throughout all of these songs or pieces, and you're going to be able to recognize them even subconsciously. So when you're listening, it's one of the greatest exercises that you can do for your ear and for your brain, and one of the most beneficial. My second tip is to understand your instrument, know how it works, and know what unique sound qualities that it has. So the examples that I give are for me, of course, as a violinist relating to violin. So try to think of examples relating to your instrument. But for me as a violinist, I know that when I play an open string, a string that doesn't have any fingers down, it sounds very different than a closed string, a string that does have fingers down on it. So even if it's the same note, they sound very different from each other. The open string is kind of bright and brassy. Sometimes it can be kind of harsh, and the closed string is a bit warmer. Sometimes it can be maybe a little bit more fuzzy in sound quality. So for me as a violinist, when I hear that in a piece of music, I am immediately tuned in to where that note is. That is something that I can immediately identify because I understand how my instrument works. So when I hear that, I immediately know what's going on. And similarly, a note played in a lower position sounds very different than a note played in a higher position. So if I play a note in a lower position, and then the same note again in a higher position, again, they sound very different. The one in the lower position is brighter, and the one in the higher position is a bit warmer. Sometimes it can lose some clarity. So again, when I hear that, I'm going to immediately know what's happening. And if you think, I don't really know of any of those differences on my instrument, I can't really hear things like that. Well, that probably means you're not paying enough attention when you're practicing. So these are things that can immediately clue you in to where you are when you are learning a piece of music. And additionally, if you can identify, so for me as a violinist, if I can identify that a note is played in a higher position, we have typical patterns that we play in. We have typical fingerings that we do. So those patterns that I was talking about in tip number 1, where you listen and your brain will be able to hear and pick up on these patterns, we also have physical patterns. We have patterns that we play in. So if I can hear where something is, I'm going to be able to eliminate a lot of possibilities just by knowing what the violinist wouldn't do because we typically have certain patterns that we play things in. So if you understand how your instrument works and you can hear the unique sound qualities that it has, then you're going to be able to really quickly hone into what is happening in a piece of music, both by the audible signals, what you're hearing, and also by the physical patterns that you're used to. My next tip goes hand in hand with the previous tip, and it will help you do that one and vice versa. And this next tip is to practice. It is to practice your instrument without even worrying about whatever piece of music you're trying to learn by ear. Don't worry about learning by ear at all. Just practice your instrument, because when you're practicing, what are you doing? You're listening. Wow, that sounds a lot like tip number 1. It's almost like I placed that one at number 1 for a reason. So again, what I mean by that, again, the example that I give will be specific to violin, but apply it as you will. So something that I have to be really careful about when I'm practicing is my intonation, is playing in tune. So if I am playing 2 notes and I'm trying to get them in tune, say I'm trying to do an E to a G, if I am practicing getting those in tune, yes, I am practicing getting those in tune, but what I'm also doing is I am really internalizing that interval because I'm listening to it over and over again, trying to make sure that it's perfect. So what that's doing is it's allowing my ear and my brain to memorize that interval. So when I go to listen to a piece of music, I should be able to hear and recognize that interval because I've been practicing it for so long. I should be able to pick up on that pattern. So that is another thing that will make you so much better at learning by ear without you even really trying to be able to learn by ear. Just practice your instrument. Those things like that will clue you into so many things immediately. So when you hear those intervals, those things that you've been practicing, you're going to immediately be able to identify them because you've been working on them for so long. So just another example, say I'm trying to get a D to a C sharp in tune. If I'm playing that and I have also been actively listening to other music, then when I'm practicing that interval, what does that sound like? Suddenly I've got Jurassic Park without even trying to learn it. I was just practicing an interval and because my brain memorized it and internalized it, I was able to recognize it in something else. So practice your instrument and practice it a whole lot and be careful when you are practicing it. Be very careful when you practice. My last tip for this section I intentionally saved for last because, well, I thought if I put it first, you'd get mad at me and then click out of the video. So I saved it for last. And that is to be patient. It's going to take time and a lot of it. So if you couldn't really hear or pick up on some of the things that I was saying earlier, don't worry about it. It's okay. It doesn't mean that you're musically inept. It just takes a while. So know that it's going to take time. Be okay with the fact that it's going to take time and just persevere and don't stop practicing. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither were my biceps. Cut. And that brings me on to the second part of the video where I go over tips for when you are actively learning a piece of music, not what to do beforehand. So my first tip, or maybe not even tip, but just piece of advice that I would give before picking a piece of music is start by choosing something that is played by your instrument. And that is for the exact reasons I was talking about in the first part of the video where I was going over how you know your instrument the best. You know those unique sound qualities and tendencies that it has. So when you are learning something by ear, you're going to be able to pick up on that a lot quicker. You know your instrument the best, so you're going to be able to learn it the quickest. So start with a piece of music that is played by your instrument, and what that's going to do is give your ear the training and the practice so that when you go on to learning something that is not played by your instrument, you're going to be able to do it a lot quicker and with more ease because you've had the practice of learning something that you knew better beforehand. So even for me, I've been doing it for a while, but I still have a really hard time learning something by ear when it's played by something that has a very different sound quality from a violin. That still takes me a really long time just because it sounds so different. So I can pick something up by ear a lot quicker if it's played on violin than it is on something else. So I would really highly recommend starting on something that is played by your instrument and your instrument solo if possible. So now say you've chosen your piece of music and you are going to try to learn it. My next tip would be don't worry at all about what the notes actually are. Don't worry about whether it's an E or a G or a B flat or whatever it is. Instead of thinking about what the actual notes are, internalize the melody, internalize the song. So pick just a phrase, just a small phrase. Don't pick the whole song, of course. Just pick a small section of it and hum it in your head. Just go through it in your head. Think about where the music is going. Maybe it starts going up and then it goes down, or maybe it goes down and then it goes up. Think about the shape of where the music is going. Because think about it, if you're trying to go somewhere, yes, you need to know the name of the building that you're going to, but knowing the name of the building doesn't actually tell you how to get there. You need to know the direction. So it's the same thing with learning a song. Know the direction of where the music is going. So when you've picked that small phrase, that little musical sentence, picture the shape, hum it in your head, picture the shape of it in your head, try to follow along with its patterns. And then when you choose two notes, when you choose an interval, do the exact same thing. Is the second note higher or lower? Where is it going? Are these two notes far apart or are they close to each other? Try to feel what the interval is. Again, don't worry about what the notes are. Just try to feel what the interval is. Do that first. Internalize the music first instead of just, trying to randomly guess a bunch of notes and play all of them, try and get one that will hopefully match. Think about it in your head first. Try it out. And if it's right, awesome, you got it. If it's not right, just think about what sounded off, internalize that and then adjust accordingly to the song. So hum it in your head, figure out the pattern of it. Don't just randomly go in trying to play notes hoping that it's going to match. My final tip, and obviously there's a lot of tips that I could give and things that I could talk about, but my final tip for this video is one that I really wish I had figured out much sooner. It would have made my life a lot easier, and that is you don't have to go in order. I know that kind of seems obvious, but I don't know why. It took me a long time to figure it out. So say you are learning a song and you've done everything. You've tried to internalize the phrase, you've hummed it, you've tried to listen to specific cues that the instruments can give you. You've done everything like that, but you just can't figure out what the first couple of notes are. You don't have to figure out the first notes first. So if you're stuck on those, just keep going along in the song until there is a note that you can identify. So let's say there are 4 notes and I just cannot for the life of me figure out what the first 2 are. That's fine. I'm just going to go on until I can figure out what one of the notes is. So maybe I get to the 3rd note and I can hear that it's played by an open string. Say it was by an open A string. It doesn't matter at all that I couldn't figure out the first 2 notes first, because by knowing that that 3rd note is in A string, it's going to tell me a lot of things. By identifying that one, I'm probably going to be able to figure out the interval of the previous note and the next note a lot easier because I figured out what that first note is. And another thing that it does is say it was an A. Then, if this is as music theory as I'll get in this video, but say you play your scales and you know your key signatures. If that note was an A, then you can probably eliminate any key signature that has an A flat in it. Yes, there could be an accidental or something, but in most cases, you can kind of eliminate some of these things. Now, I know you don't really want to do this by a process of elimination, and I was just talking about not really focusing on what the actual notes are, but you got to do what you got to do. So know that you don't have to start at the beginning of the melody. You can just keep going until you find one thing, just one thing that you can identify, and that's going to make figuring out the rest so much easier. And there we go. Those are my top tips for learning by ear. I know they're really weird. They're really, really, really weird tips. I didn't really give you anything definite. I didn't point you towards any materials or any specific exercises to do. I kind of just said, here's this weird thing, make it applicable to you and have fun. So I know it's weird and maybe a little bit hard to follow, but I learned how to learn by ear completely by myself just through years of trial and error and just a whole lot of trying and of hard work. And these are the things that I honestly found to be the most helpful for me. So I hope they were helpful for you too. Please comment down below and let me know if they were, or maybe it wasn't helpful and you have questions. Please comment those down below as well and I'll try to get back to you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Really big shout out to my Patreon community. You guys are the bestest. Let me know if you guys want me to do more talking videos like this. I'm not really good at talking. Feel a little weird about it sometimes, but let me know if you want more and I'll try to make that happen. So thank you so much and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.